Hello, everyone. Hello, 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 and welcome, 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 welcome to Satsang with G. I'm trying some new things out here. I've got the entire studio set up for doing some videos, and I didn't want to rearrange it, so I'm actually sitting here with my iPad. I'm trusting all of you can hear me, and I'm trusting that I'm going to get the messages. So please type into the chat that you're here, that you can hear me, and where you are, so I can get to it. Test unlisted. Nope. Satsang with G. There we go. So I'm going to use my phone for reading off the questions and the like. So this actually works pretty good. I was going to have a different mic, so I'm hoping everyone, but I realized that my iPad was almost out of power, and so I had to basically plug it in. So we're just using the iPad's mic. So I'm trusting you all can hear me, which would be really good, because if you can't, let me know and I'll. Sounds good. Excellent. Thank you, Anne. So let's see what we got here. Hiya, G. Before I am. Catherine from Ireland. Hello. Daryl says hello. Anikitos from Greece. Love, 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 love it, Matt. Hello, great to be here. Alia says hello. Remington says hi. Eli says hello. Your mic is a little low. It's the best I can do. So sorry about it. If everybody else can everybody help me? You're quiet. Can you try to move the mic closer? I don't have a mic. I don't know what it is about the mic on the iPad. Hi from Slovenia. Hi from Russia. Saab in Paris. Wonderful. Everybody is saying that the mic is low. If I hook up a mic, what will happen is the iPad is going to go dead. And so, and I don't want to be like this the entire time. So I'm just going to have to speak up. How's that? I'll just have to speak louder than I normally do, and the like. So, but without further ado, let's kind of dive in to the whole reason we're here, and that is to explore the truth. And I named this particular satsang "Truth for Truth's Sake," because I find oftentimes, way more often than I like, that the interests of and motivations and objectives of self-help tend to get conflated with the objectives of spirituality. The whole point of self-help is self-improvement, make yourself better, make yourself more wealthy, have more opportunity, all sorts of personal gain, right? Where spirituality is about the pursuit of truth for the sake of truth. You know, Christ said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you." He did not say, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, so that all these other things would be added unto you." There's a natural consequence when we seek truth for truth's sake, that our human needs get taken care of. They do. They may not be taken care of to the level that you hope they were. The truth is under no obligation to fulfill all of your desires. And as a matter of fact, the more egoic our desires are, the less willing truth is to fulfill them, because if the desires of your ego get fulfilled, you are in a way worse position than you'd be if they weren't. It's when we go through periods of deprivation or confusion and not knowing that we actually have to rely more deeply on what it is we're seeing that's true. There's the signs of grace are compassion, are peace, are happiness, are love, are the willingness to sacrifice, the willingness to include all and not just yourself. That's the real fruit of spiritual pursuits. There's a lot of people who think that that wealth and accomplishment and success and fame are the sign of spiritual grace. They're not. Those things might happen. It is possible. Eckhart Tolle is a genuine, absolutely genuine, enlightened man. And he also has a lot of success and fame and even money. But he didn't. Matter of fact, he was even asked once, well, now that you've written a book and you're well known and famous and everything, how is that for you? He says, well, my mother's happy. He lived on nothing for a couple of years, sitting on the park bench. He rode around on an old bike, completely content with himself. And little by little, he would help people. He would counsel people and that sort of. Little by little, the structure of thought that became the power of now took form in his mind, and he wrote the book, and then he became very famous. But it was secondary. And you could tell when you listen to him, there's just a calm about him. There's a peace. It's not about that. Now, it may happen. It may not. I myself have had enormous successes and enormous failures. And I've learned from that. When I was writing success, I thought this was it. This was the way it was supposed to be. It was going to last forever, until it didn't. And then when it didn't, I was confused. For a long time, I was like, well, I got to manifest my way out of it. I've got, bad thoughts and feelings going through me. I'm going to have to work on them. And I do more work on myself. And then I realized it had nothing to do with any of that. That the ups and downs in life teach us to not rely on external circumstances, but to rely on the truth that lies within the hearts and minds of all of us, at the depths of us. So, I always like to present that. I'm kind of the black knight of the whole self-help thing, because I've taught manifestation and the law of attraction and various kinds of personal development techniques and energy healing. But I always do it, and I always make it subordinate to the deeper spiritual truth. And the more I do this, the longer it goes on, and the older I get, the less and less I'm interested in teaching about those kinds of things, except where they open up somebody's mind to recognize that while it's true that your thoughts and feelings are creating your experience of reality, it is not true that knowledge is here to make you get whatever it is you want. Because the you that wants it is not the you that you are. And somebody just actually asked the question, what is truth? Truth is reality. Truth is not an idea. I can't tell you what truth is because if I do, it becomes an object of the mind, and now it becomes something other than yourself. Truth is your own being. Truth is the livingness and aliveness that is you. The reason you pursue it is because we don't know who we are. We're believing this image we have in our minds. We believe we are our memories. We believe we are conditioned patterns. We believe we are our thoughts. We believe we are our feelings and sensations. We believe that we are our experiences. We have an image of ourselves in our minds. And we believe that is who we actually are. And all it takes is one moment to realize that all of those are being seen by something else. And what is seeing all the thoughts, feelings, and sensations and watching them come and go is not coming and going. It is not a thought. It is not a sensation. It is not a feeling. It is not a memory. It is not an association. It is not a condition, because all of that is being witnessed by something else. That witness is the truth. To know that as yourself, with nothing extra added, is the spiritual pursuit. That is what this is all about. That's what Satsang is for. So, as always, I'm open. Let me See where people are coming from here. Astrid and Matt from Germany. Hello to the both of you. You're quiet. Can you? Oh, move. Volume is low. Closer. How low? Are you okay? You can hear me well enough? I'll make sure that everything is connected better next week. Just an oversight on my part. Barbaro says hello from Sweden. Ewa is here. Namaste. Harun, hello, my friend. I somehow attended the wrong satsang last week, but I'm there now. Good. Infinity, I can hear you okay. Good, good. Chrissy says hi from New Zealand. We have a hi from Bulgaria. Eternal Inside says it's okay. We can power up our speakers. Don't scream, GP. I got Angela also from Belgium. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Patang, GP, loud and clear. Good. Then Daryl says, what is truth and why pursue it? I hope I answered that for you, Daryl, because for the longest time, I thought truth was some kind of system of thought. It was an approach. It was a perception. So I was just trying to refine my mind more and more and more to get more of the pure truth, until I realized that the truth was not a thought. The truth was the one experiencing thoughts. And somebody actually added to that question, if truth can't be pursued, if it is what we are. That is absolutely true. But I always point people back to a statement that the Buddha made, who was the clearest teacher of all time, as far as I'm concerned, who said simply that that one of the practices, the ultimate practices of a human being, was to delight in the personal realization of Buddha knowledge. Yes, the truth is the truth. It's the truth whether you pursue it or not. Who you are is who you are, whether you pursue it or not. What we are, the pursuit of truth is not getting something that you don't already have or being something that you not already are. It is dissolving, it is divesting yourself of all the ideas you have about yourself that aren't true. Those are what limit us. Those are what constrict us. Those are what cause us suffering. That image of ourselves as being a separate someone, a separate person, divorced from, isolated from the oneness of all things, is the cause of all suffering. The truth that we are pursuing is the personal realization of that Buddha knowledge, the Buddha knowledge being the pure, eternal truth of your being. Not a true thought about your being, but the actual direct truth of your being and the recognition of it for what it really is. You know, many people have an experience of awakening, or an experience of the pure emptiness, where there's no fireworks, no special effects, just this stillness, just this quiet, and think there's supposed to be more. The thought, well, oh, this is great, but isn't it supposed to be? And there's this long laundry list of things that the mind thinks that it's supposed to be experiencing. The ordinariness of the reality of your being is a shock. The fact that it has been hiding in plain sight the entire time, simply overlooked because we're looking for an object rather than having our attention on where we're looking from, has devalued it. I mean, I hear people talking about, well, what's the value of awakening? Well, what's the value of knowing what's absolutely true? People, well, I'm awakening. Well, is that going to help me get what I want? I'm going to lead a better life. It's going to have better quality relationships. Well, the answer is yes to all of those questions, but not immediately, and not and it certainly will not be the way you think it's going to be. All those things do get added on, but only when we have gotten to the point where we really do seek the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of truth above all else. When we get to there, then yes, other things are added on, because all those things being added on won't make you budge. They won't distract you. They won't tempt you away. They won't make you think that something else is more important. Your your priorities will be straight. So the realization of who you are, the not as a thought, not as an idea, but as just the direct experience of reality as it is the pursuit. And to do that, we must divest ourselves of everything that isn't true. And really, that's what this is about. You can't make the truth true. It's always true. It's eternally true. It is the truth. Period. End of story. But our realization of it, well, that is our own individual path, our own individual awakening story, our own individual Buddha story. So, let's see. Matt says, I've been meditating daily for about 8 years, but I rarely experience samadhi. Most of the time I just feel irritation and pain. Also, I don't feel happier. I have become very misanthropic and isolated. Okay, the first thing is that have no expectation about what meditation is supposed to do. You said, I rarely experience samadhi. Forget samadhi. Forget altered states. Forget consciousness. When you meditate, just put your attention on you, on that which is aware of all the experiences. Even the desire for samadhi, for some kind of great state, is just a thought that's appearing. Put the attention on you. See if you can see yourself. You can't, of course. You cannot perceive the perceiver, right? The I don't feel happiness. Don't look for an emotional state for confirmation. Happiness is going to come and go. As far as being misanthropic and isolated, go out and make friends. Don't ignore your life. Don't make some spiritual attainment the ultimate and absolute, that you cut everything else out of your life until that happens. That's no different than the guy who puts off, doing what they love to do until they've, have a lot of money in the bank. It's not a luxury. Right? This is not, you don't put your life off. Meditate in your life. You take your meditation off of the cushion. So there's a meditation, there's quiet time. There's a time to just be with yourself and to just experience yourself. Notice where you're looking from and not what you're seeing. Notice that every desire to get something from meditation, however noble it may seem, is part of the same thing. It's a mind trying to create some kind of result that's going to say, I've got it now. Just be in that space of the pure witness. And then get off the cushion. Go out, engage in life, go to movies, have friends, have a relationship. Let yourself live life. And while you're doing that, notice that you are simultaneously engaged in life and experiencing and aware of yourself having the experience. Now it's full. You're missing nothing. You're actually allowing your meditation to be a moment-by-moment thing, or as Paul said, to pray without ceasing. He didn't mean on your knees, reciting the Lord's prayers or Hail Marys, right? He meant that every moment is the opportunity to become fully aware of being that presence in this moment, and inviting your experience. In the very first section on inner reconciliation, one of the very first meditations I did was the thing I called undivided attention. And it's a practice. It starts as a practice where you're simply aware of what's happening in the outside world and happening as what's inside at the same time. Normally our attention gets really focused outward, right? Squirrel, right? And then we go into our meditation. We sit back and we Om, right? what I want you to do is to be able to do both. I would meditate on the subway, in buses, in cars, crowded places. I'd be sitting in an airport. I'm not being a display about it. I'm not sitting in the middle of the floor in lotus position. I'm just sitting in the chair waiting to get on the plane. I have my eyes closed. And I'm just taking in all the surroundings, and I'm aware of myself being aware in those surroundings. And I drop all my judgment as to what those surroundings should be, what it should be like. You know, the plane is delayed, where the pilot, why, all of that stuff's going on. You can feel people's anger, feels hope, anticipation, people are sad because they're leaving somebody. All of that's going on around you, and simultaneously, you are simply sitting here aware of it all. That is meditation. No judgment of it, no taking a position, just pure presence. Out of that pure presence, real action takes place. So don't separate your everyday life from meditation. There's no place you're going to arrive at in meditation, then it's going to be all done. There's no definitive aha. It is a gradual colonization of your entire life by the deepest spiritual perception. And that perception is that you actually are the I am. And it is the I am that is experiencing all of life. And now you're not dreaming anymore. And yet the dream continues. But it's no longer a dream. It's simply life that's happening. Does that help answer your question there, Matt? Thank you for asking that. It's a big one. And I was there. I was stuck in that position so many times. Billy Boy says, "Hi GP, glad to be here. If we were once pure consciousness, why and how would we come to incarnate? Pure consciousness has a remnant of ego." Oh, question. Does pure consciousness? Why come back here and then do the loop to want to go back? There's a misunderstanding of consciousness. Are you not conscious right now? Is there not consciousness in this moment? If there wasn't, there would be nothing, right? So consciousness does not come and go. And consciousness is never impure, right? Consciousness does not become impurified. It does not become corrupted by what it's conscious of. The things arise and subside within consciousness. Right? That's the nature of consciousness. I mean, the nature of the sky is it produces clouds, doesn't it? Temperature gets to a certain point, certain conditions happen, a cloud appears. Out of nowhere, right? Temperature drops, boom, a cloud appears. Out of nowhere. The potential for it was always there, but now all of a sudden the conditions are there, and boom, the cloud appears. Conditions change, the cloud disappears. Maybe it deepens, and it becomes a rainstorm, or a snowstorm, or something else. But then those conditions fade away, and the cloud disappears. This is the nature of the sky, right? It's not an accident. It's not something the sky resists. It resists. Does the sky say, that shouldn't have happened, that was terrible, why do I have to go through this again? Right? When you're identified with the person, and in the beginning we all are, of course, and we begin to grasp the idea of being all consciousness, we at first try to take that information in from the perspective of being a limited person. So now we're actually projecting on consciousness limitations that it does not possess. It doesn't matter what happens in consciousness, does it? Consciousness remains unaffected. The worst thing in the world could be happening to you, and then after a period of time it ends, and now the best thing in the world is happening to you, and after a time that ends. Now, has consciousness, that is our innate awareness of things, has it been affected by that? You know, there's a huge forest fire on the movie screen. Is the movie screen affected in the slightest? Does it get burnt? Does it even smell of smoke? Consciousness doesn't come and go. What consciousness experiences does come and go. but it's the nature of consciousness for that to happen. And even the sense of a separate self has arisen within consciousness. This is deep. And it's really hard to explain. I try to do my best, but it is just so subtle that even the sense of a separate self is simply something that has arisen in consciousness because it can. Consciousness has no limits. Consciousness can experience a universe of freedom and joy and bliss and heavenliness, or it can experience a hell. The potential for all of it lies there. Now we have a preference, right? So I prefer heaven over hell. And in that preference, I think, well, why in the world would consciousness produce this horrible stuff? Why doesn't God make things different? Well, from the perspective of consciousness, being completely unaffected by all of it, the question has no meaning. There's no preference in consciousness. This is really, really hard for people to grasp. I remember Joseph Campbell talking about that when he was beginning to realize this himself. He's a very awakened man, and he was talking to an Indian master, an Indian yogi, and this is what he was hearing. He said, "You mean there is no difference between the highest good and the worst evil?" And no, there isn't. All of it is appearing in front of consciousness, and the only time it matters is when we identify with one side of it or another. That's actually the only thing that makes something good or evil. I was stunning to him, but little by little it began to sink in the depth of the meaning of that. Now that doesn't mean we should just ignore the evil that's going on. I take a very powerful stance against the state of the world right now, the state of economies, the state of politics, the state of governments, the inequality, the incredible gap between the rich and the poor. These are all immoral, and I will not stop speaking out against them. The capitalist system is greed incarnate. There's nothing good about it, right? So I will not stop speaking in those terms, right? But at the same time, that's just me being practical. The Dalai Lama does the same thing, constantly bringing everybody back to love and compassion. That's the only thing that is going to make us realize fully who we are. Right? But at the same time, I'm not going to pin my happiness and my truth and my sense of reality on the circumstances that are going on in the world. It would be an endless fight, because the world is simply nothing more than the ego incarnate right now. So I hope that helps with that question, Billy Boy. No one wants to go there. No one wants to go and come back. This is simply what is being perceived. It's only our identification with the content of consciousness rather than the consciousness that makes it feel like I am coming and going. You're not. You are that which is watching everything come and go. And that which is watching everything come and go is indefinable. It's ineffable. It can't be pointed at. It can't be known as an object. It is simply what you are. Are you not aware of your being? Now just go to that place. I say, do you exist? And you say yes. Now in between me asking that question and you answering that question, you went somewhere. It wasn't your mind you were consulting. It wasn't your feelings. Something else. Something that just, I know. Something inherent that you know. Really, that's all there is to it. Don't let the mind try to turn this into some kind of event that requires special effects. That's it. It seems small, it seems insignificant, the mind does not value it, but believe me, it is the creator of worlds. Eva says, forgot to write, I'm from Poland. Thank you. Thank you, Eva, that's really great. That's wonderful. It's so wonderful to see, God, Bulgaria, Romania, so many people around the world. The message of genuine non-dual spiritual truth has universal appeal, Isn't it incredible that we have this device that we can communicate all over the world simultaneously? I'm just like, it's like blown away. I keep saying that humanity has built itself a very primitive universal nervous system. We are right on the verge of being so completely connected to one another that the boundary lines just disappear. And of course, simultaneously, you know, those whose power is threatened by this are trying to control the whole thing, but they won't win. Sorry, too late. Katie says hi from London. Eternal Inside. But the question that bothers me always and raises doubt: how we know awareness is over our minds and not something that the mind creates? Can we be sure for this before death to find out? I have to point you at your own experience. Right? If we're talking about awareness, we're talking about a concept that we're holding, right? So yes, that's in the mind, right? But what that concept is pointing at, that which allows us to even have a mind and have these questions, is not the mind. The very fact that we can speak at all means there is awareness. The fact that you can perceive at all means there is awareness. And I know it's over, you can know it's over the mind because the mind, thought, comes and goes. This does not. It witnesses it coming and going. Mind shifts. This does not. I'm inviting you to not take this as concepts, but to look for yourself, to look at your own sense of aware existence, to dive into it, not just go, oh yes, there it is now, and then try to make some kind of idea about what it is, to try to, quote unquote, understand it. Dive into it directly. And notice if thought or mind is necessary for it. Does it need mind in order to exist? In order to perceive me, in order to perceive this conversation, do you need any thoughts? Do you need any concepts? The answer is you don't. Now we use concepts. We use them to point. We use them as examples. We use them to share. We use them for intimacy and communication. But they are not what we are made of. And if you never had a thought, you would still exist. Plenty of critters do. They exist without a single thought. And yet, they too have this same sense of I am. A plant has this sense of I am. Everything has the sense I am. Or more accurately put, the sense I am has everything. It is the one I am that is at the root of all things. My conclusion that it is beyond thought didn't come from thought. It came from the seeing of that which is perceiving thought. And it is not mind. It is myself. Mind is something that I experience. It is not what I am. And I invite you to explore this for yourself. That which is knowing everything is not the object of anything. It's not something known except to itself, as itself. Oh. At this point, it gets hard. I kind of fall into the non-dual Advaita speak, and I don't like to do that, but you get to a point where it's just the subtleness of it. It's so difficult to put into words. Matt says, my understanding of who I am is that I am a process, but with no entity behind it. In Buddhist terms, the five aggregates. But what you're saying about something behind watching sounds different. Yes, it is. And this is actually a key difference in the Buddha's time. And the Heart Sutra addresses this precisely. That point of being the five skandhas, which are just simply a process without any entity behind it. And if you look at all life around you, that's all it is. But they dismantled that. The Heart Sutra was a dismantling of this very idea, that showing even that teaching itself was empty. But this emptiness was not nothingness. this emptiness was the pure awareness that could not even really be called a self. The Buddhist approach of no self was to bring somebody back to the essential emptiness, and to stop projecting upon forms a sense of self-existence that they do not actually possess. The other approach was the Advaita approach in the Hindu, which is the self, the para-atman, the ultimate, the self beyond the self, the ultimate one that is seeing everything. In Buddhism, in the Lankavatara, he would refer to it as the truth is the body of the Buddha. They're actually saying exactly the same thing. You are not the skandhas, but that emptiness can't mean nothingness, because if it did, you couldn't be hearing my words right now. You are conscious of me right this moment. Consciousness is there. That consciousness is the self, period. Right? And it is empty in that it has no particular form. It is not constrained within anything. It is neither this nor that. It is the potential for everything. It is that which gives rise to everything, but never is contained or limited by what arises. Like music is not contained in one song. You can have an infinite number of songs and you will not exhaust music. Music did not crawl inside one particular piece of music and not be able to get back out. There's an infinite amount that it can produce, yet music, just by itself, is imperceivable. What is it? It's obviously real, but it's not knowable. It's not something you can put your finger on. It is the potential for everything. Consciousness is like that. You are not what appears to consciousness. You are the infinite ocean of consciousness in which everything is appearing. And so even the teaching of the Buddha is empty of self-existence. You know, teaching that was completely relevant 100 years ago is outdated now. There's no such thing as the pure perfect teaching. It's constantly remolding itself to fit the disposition and capacity of the individual here. So I answer each question individually. I don't try to answer each question with the general thing that applies to everyone, right? Although oftentimes it does. So is that answering your question, Matt, of why it sounds a bit different? It is actually the Mahayana path. It is the path of total emptiness, but that emptiness is not nothingness. That emptiness is shunyata, pregnant emptiness, absolutely alive with everything, but not contained by anything at all. You are capable of being anything, but you will never be stuck as anything. Lately I've been using the analogy of the jar and water. The water can take any shape at all. If the water believes itself to be the shape of that jar, it will feel the limitations of the jar, not realizing that all it has to do is dissolve the jar and it can take any shape at all. You know, you happen to be in this moment. Take the shape of a man or a woman, and you do certain things. You have certain inclinations and certain gifts and certain abilities. Those are not you. They're simply how you appear in this moment. You can enjoy them fully, and they will pass away. But you are the infinite potential to be anything. Therefore, you can never let yourself think of yourself as the thing that you happen to appear. Do not think of yourself as the container. Think of yourself as the water. I am the water. I'm in this container. It's great. Fine. I'm great with being in this container. But I know that it's going to end. I'm going to fall out of this container. And that my actual nature cannot be contained. This is the liberation that we point at. This is more than just non-dual philosophy. It's liberation. Remember, to the Buddhist, the Hinayana path was the seeking of this great emptiness, of samadhi, of not having, of the great nothingness, the great void. But the Mahayana path, the great vehicle, the, the, the goal, if you can use that term, was enlightenment. Knowing yourself as that which cannot be contained, and therefore completely embracing your humanness. That is, embracing the container you happen to be appearing in, knowing that you're not limited by it. And so it's a willingness to become the ordinary human being. It's a complete surrender to this moment, knowing full well that you are beyond all moments. Is it getting clearer for you? I hope so. Seeking Truth says, hello GP, are you familiar with Carl Jung, anima animus archetype, the female energy in a man and the masculine energy in a woman? And if so, I would like to get your opinion on this. Thanks. Well, yes. Consciousness has no gender. Pour consciousness into a female body, it will take on the characteristics of the female. It will have the female likes and dislikes, right? You will have the female sets of emotions, female thoughts. Pour the same water into the male body, and it'll have the male experience. Pour it into the body of a cat, and it'll have the cat experience, right? Consciousness simply conforms itself to whatever it gets poured into, right? And so it has those feelings. Yet consciousness always remains the infinite potential of anything. So by saying that, limiting myself by thinking I'm a man, and this is what men are, is a huge mistake. I have a male body, right? So I have this voice, right? And I've got this hair on my face, right? And I've got certain piece parts that the female doesn't have. But the essence of me remains genderless. It remains completely open and free. So this is the vehicle through which I express. So my thoughts come out with a masculine energy and a masculine slant. Just the way if I was a piano player, I'm playing a Steinway, the music's gonna sound one way. If I'm playing an electronic keyboard, it sounds another way. If I'm playing a Moog synthesizer, it sounds another way. If I'm playing a clavinet, it sounds another way. Right? It's just simply the vehicle. The musician, the ultimate musician, is not constrained by that, but this is the vehicle through which it gets expressed. So is that clear? Yeah. I am neither male nor female. I have the full range, infinite range of all qualities. As a matter of fact, even labeling certain qualities as masculine or feminine, I think, is really silly. We think women are soft and nurturing. Plenty of men are soft and nurturing, and that women are weak and demure. Bullshit. Women are strong as tough as nails. They're I mean, it's nonsense. It's just the vehicle through which it gets expressed has its certain characteristics, just the way different guitars have different characteristics. So, and I think we're seeing a lot of it. It's amazing to me when I look on YouTube and I'm seeing all of these female musicians. I mean, rock guitarists, an area that was exclusive for men, right? And they're just like blowing the doors off of everyone because they can now. They're free. Their opportunities are there. They're no longer restricted by culture and these narrow thoughts about what's capable. And at the same time, you can completely enjoy, just embrace the femininity that is that quality of experience that you're having right now. Just like I've embraced the masculinity, which is the quality of experience I'm having right now. But it's not what I am. It's only the form I'm inhabiting temporarily. And, I have no idea when this form is going to end, hopefully later rather than sooner, because I love what I'm doing. And I love GP. I'm really enjoying being, but I know I'm not him. I know that's just a form that we've projected a name and characteristics on. It's just a temporary costume I happen to be wearing. Does that answer your question, my friend, about that? Let's see. Anais retracted, Patain retracted. Either I answered the question or... Okay. The cloud analogy is good. I'm going to steal that one. You're allowed to. everything, everything I offer you is free. It's given to you. It's given to you freely because it came freely to me. So if you understand something, if something clicks, you go, "Wow, that really makes sense." It's yours. You've just made it yours. Believe me, when you say it, it's going to come out with your voice and your energy and everything about it. Thanks, GP. I'll try, says Matt. Hassan says hi from Malaysia. Hello, Hassan. Very good question. How important is to love oneself first before attempting to love others? I don't see it as a first and a second. I see it as love. Learn to love. Sometimes by loving others, we learn to love ourselves. Sometimes we need to learn, sometimes in our relationship, we learn that we are, in the relationship itself, we learn that we are always deferring. We are always equivocating, which means we're not really loving ourselves. We're not showing up as ourselves. There's no fixed order to this stuff. You know, people love these little platitudes. In order to love anybody, you have to love yourself first. It's not true. They can happen simultaneously. And if it's a really good relationship, that's exactly what will happen. That's the point of a relationship. A really good relationship between two people that's really honest and open, and both are growing, and both are willing to speak their hearts. An environment of safety gets created that is capable of healing all of the mommy issues and daddy issues that went before. Because the mommy issues and daddy issues were created by not having a safe environment. And then what we do in relationship, in intimate relationship, is we show up not really as ourselves. We pretend to be somebody else in order to get the affection. The facade eventually falls, and we wonder who am I with? Who is this person? And we move on. But the potential of it, if you actually showed up completely, you can create a safe environment, and the absence of which was the cause of our emotional difficulties. It's the only reason you don't love yourself is because you're in an environment where you are not loved. So you can create an environment where you are loved, but that also means intimacy means being yourself. It means being bold. It means courageously displaying yourself as you actually are, warts and all, and being willing to take the feedback of how that impacts somebody else. This is the creative tension that allows us to grow. It allows us to truly utilize relationship for what it's really for. Intimacy means the opportunity for us to know ourselves and to express ourselves more fully. You can't do that by yourself. So this idea of loving yourself first, I don't know how anybody could do it, quite frankly. That's not completely true. There are things that you can do. For me, loving yourself means accepting myself as I am, period. That's all it means. And that means accepting my feelings, even when I don't like them, accepting all the thoughts, accepting all the conditioning that's taking place to me, to me. I see it as the yoga of allowing. Just being present with what is in this moment. That's loving yourself. And you can walk into a relationship with that willingness to be present with what you're feeling in that moment. And that, of course, is what opens the door to intimacy. Right? Does that answer your question, my friend? That's really a good one. But as always, I go, for somebody to say it's one or you have to do this first and then that, it's silly. That's the mind loves to make rules, right? And you don't need rules. You need presence. Be present. Now, don't seek the sense of self-acceptance in another, but utilize relationship with another and the natural desire for intimacy as the opportunity to uncover all the places where you haven't been loving yourself. And sometimes somebody else can come into your life who absolutely adores you just the way you are, doesn't think this thing you're embarrassed of, this thing you think is a terrible fault of yours, doesn't think it's so bad at all. Maybe even actually think it's cute. Maybe even think it's sexy. Right? So there are no rules here, folks. Don't seek self-acceptance in a relationship, but don't think you have to avoid relationship in order to have self-acceptance. Right? It's the middle way. Let yourself move through life. Be present where you are. If you're with somebody, be totally present with them. Be open, be honest, be painfully honest with yourself. And if you're alone, be painfully obvious with yourself. Notice nobody's actually completely alone. Right? We all have relations, some more or less intimate, just friends. Be more open with the people that you know, even if it's an acquaintance at work. Just be more present. That will open up the door for greater intimacy and greater self-acceptance and self-love. Billy Boy says, stellar explanation as always. You have a gift for expression. Thanks. Thanks tons. Well, thank you. Thank you. Gift for expression. For me, it's just always a striving to put into words something that can't be put into words. You know, it's kind of funny, you know, I'm trying to do something I know is impossible to do. So every day is nothing but one failure after another. And yet, I keep doing it. What can I say? Kate says, what's your opinion on the dark night of the soul, GP? Do all spiritual seekers experience this? Yes, but don't think you know what it is, okay? And don't think there's just one of them. Anytime we come to a position where our egoic identification is threatened, where our egoic ambitions and desires are thwarted, we experience the crisis that will either make you develop a different kind of ego to compensate for it, or will bring you to the point where you let go of the egoic desire. And you'll discover the reality of you and the natural desires of life. That moment can be extremely trying, right? Because our habits don't work anymore. The way we've done life doesn't work anymore. And our egos are feeling, remember, the suffering is always in the ego. It's never in you. It's never in the consciousness. It's always in the egoic identification. So when the interests, the ambitions, the desires, the needs, the fear of death that is inherent in the ego is triggered, right? It is, the struggle is, we're either going to fix the ego or try to fix the conditions, or we're going to completely surrender, realizing that what we're witnessing is the death of the ego. That's the dark night of the soul. If you don't see it that way, you're just actually experiencing suffering that's going to be temporary and then going to be relieved. The dark night of the soul is the recognition of the egoic nature of most of what we're identified with. And the strain it gets put on that we call the dark night is what is telling us this doesn't work. Happiness doesn't lie here. If you're suffering over it, it's the ego that is suffering, and you're being called to identify back with your God self, with the true I am. That's what the calling is about. So the dark night of the soul is not personal. It's not like you have to go through it and then you are transformed. The ego goes through it and you lose the ego. You don't have to be transformed. You're the consciousness. There's nothing to transform. You're already the infinite I am. Is that clear? So yeah, our egos do get pressured. I mean, Christ was tempted. So was Buddha. Right? They had to see through the nature of egoic desire. Christ's temptations are extremely telling, right? Manifest, transform. You have magic powers. You got all these powers. You can transform the rocks into bread so you can eat. And there's like, throw yourself off the side of this hill, at the top of this temple. God will pick you up, won't let you fall. And then finally, worship me. Worship the egoic mind. That's what that means. To which he completely denied all of them and transcended the desires of the ego and awoke a completely different life. I mean, it was really a moment of spiritual awakening. Somebody asked, why do you not like to talk Advaita non-duality? Well, I am talking non-duality. There's a lot of terms that are very common amongst a lot of teachers of Advaita, and I just find them more. I find that they tend to shut down questions and not really answer them. It's not that they're not true. I'm just very careful about the words that I choose and the phrases that I use, um, because sometimes it can be. I will use some of those phrases uh, that are common to Advaita teachers when I know that it will land the way it needs to land. If not, I will use whatever metaphor or pointer or expression I have to in order for the answer to land in the particular consciousness of the one that I'm speaking to or the group that I'm speaking to. So I just try to I avoid. It's easy to fall into a habit of always kind of saying the same thing. Well, there's nobody there. There's no one who has to do anything. There's no one who needs anything. There's nothing to gain. There's nowhere to go. There's nobody here. I'm not going to be saying anything. There's nothing. There's nothing here at all. All of that is true, but without bringing somebody to the point where they can see the truth of that, you're actually doing more harm than good. You are confusing people more. And I've also find it's a very easy way to shut down a conversation. It is, it can also be misused. Uh, I take every question as being a serious question from a serious seeker who wants an answer, and I do my best to formulate an answer that is appropriate for the questioner, and not just kind of put out another platitude. So, that's why I speak in a bunch of different kinds of traditions and address it. Somebody like people who are Muslim talking about Allah, so I talk about Allah because that's the metaphor they know. That's the language that they know. This is what Buddha did. I'm just emulating, my own teacher. Muji does it like this. Watch him slip. Sometimes it'll be direct Advaita stuff, and then he'll slip back to this other posture. I mean, he's forever just kind of working with whoever's coming along and whatever it is they're doing. Oh, look at this cat hair. So does that answer your question there, Katie? Yeah, I'm squinting a little bit because I don't have my glasses on. I'm reading off all the messages off the iPhone. But it actually works quite well. US says, I make such a practice. I remind myself as often as I can that I am this aware presence in which all is happening, perceived, etc. But truly speaking, if I felt myself to be this presence and not only knew it or believed it, I would not have to remind myself about it. How to really feel this all the time? Well, by doing exactly what you're doing, and by deepening your seeing. It isn't just a practice of repetition. We're not just trying to reprogram the mind. That's what NLP does. That's what a lot of self-help practices do. Just reprogram. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to go deeper than the mind. We're trying to go to the place that is there before the mind even arose. So we're not doing a practice to get to a different place. The reminding that's happening. Notice you can't really remind yourself. There's an interest in wanting to know this truth more deeply, and that interest is reminding you. All of a sudden, you don't think, oh, I think I'm going to remind myself right now. Something reminds you. Well, what's reminding? Well, truth is reminding you. So the reminder itself is, in fact, a fulfillment of the very thing that you are seeking. So you're not, you get reminded, say, oh, I remember now, and like you did it, right? You didn't. If you ever notice where all of a sudden, oh yeah, I got to do something. Where did that thought come from? You weren't there reminding yourself. Something else reminded you. Muji makes a beautiful statement that I think might be appropriate here. He says, I am, before the thought of forgetting or the idea of needing to remember was believed. Ponder that. I am, before the idea of forgetting or the idea that I had to remember was believed. The reminder appears to consciousness. Remember, it's only an identification with the separate self that makes it seem like there's some place you need to go to. And yes, while this is unfolding, there's a process where remembering and forgetting takes place. But eventually you see that the issue is not to always remember and therefore feel good. The true goal is to see that you are there witnessing both the forgetting and the remembering, and that that which is witnessing it was never forgotten and doesn't need to be remembered. Is that clear, my friend? Hassan saying, I can look at myself. This is very frustrating. I can't look at myself. This is very frustrating. There's nothing I could find when I look within. Plus, I as doer am an illusion. Can't find that either. Any advice on that? Well, I'm sensing, Hassan, in your question, the frustration and a little bit of concern. I can't find myself. Of course, you can't. That's the whole point. It is the mind that is looking for an object that it can define clearly and say, this is what I am. It's outlined, right? But if that's the case, it's bounded, it's limited, and that means it cannot be who you are, right? Because it's bounded. And you see the boundary. You see that which is and that which is not you. That which is seeing this and that which it is not is both, is beyond all of it, right? It's seeing both of those at the same time. And I, as the doer, is an illusion. Yes, it is. When you look really really closely, and put aside all of our beliefs and our assumptions, we can see the doing, but we cannot find a doer. That's because there isn't one. The mind does not want to grasp that, doesn't want to go there. No, there must be a doer, I'm just not finding it. Because all these things are happening. Somebody must be doing them, and that is a belief. Really, why? Is somebody digesting my food? Is somebody growing my hair? Or is it just happening? Is there just this natural functioning going on? Well, what makes us think that there's somebody thinking or somebody doing this video? When you look, when you really look, you cannot find... Ooh, put it back in there. Suddenly my battery is going dead. It's getting low. I may have to fix it. I can't really tell because it doesn't tell me that when I'm live like this. Let me unplug it, plug it back in. It was working. Hopefully it'll work again. Well, we'll see. It's going to tell me again in a minute. Or it's just going to go dead, in which case I'll have to plug it in and I'll get back on. We'll start again. Maybe it'll be a shorter satsang today. I don't know. So anyway, what I was saying is that when we really look for the doer, the chooser, the person, we cannot find them. We cannot find anything. We can find lots of thoughts about them. We can find things that are happening, but we can't actually find a doer. Now this is mind-boggling. The mind says, well, there's got to be somebody there. And if we're honest, if we trust in our direct experience more than our assumptions, if we eliminate the assumptions, and no matter how improbable what remains is, we take it has to be so. We conclude there is no doer. I'm not a doer. Everything is just happening. I'm not a chooser. Everything is just happening. And then you realize that you cannot see yourself. The eye cannot see itself. A knife cannot cut itself. A scale cannot weigh itself. Right? You cannot perceive yourself. The ultimate perceiver cannot be perceived. This is not just a perceptual mistake, a perceptual distortion. You can't be seen because there's nothing there to see. It is pure emptiness. It is just being. It is not being as anything. It is not the I am this or that. It is simply being itself. Formless, infinite, boundless, unrestricted, beginningless, and endless. That's why it can't be seen. You can't see the infinite. But you are the infinite. This is the good news. It is what you are. It's okay. Eternal Insight. It's okay, GP. I'm an Advaita student. It doesn't bother me if you talk about these terms. I can really understand them. The issue I'm facing is that recent neurologist and brain scientist insist that awareness is something that the brain creates and they can prove it. How can we argue with that? I know I could see my thought like clouds, but if I will be in a coma, will I be conscious? Well, the neurologist, the neuroscience claims to prove it, but they have yet to do so. They claim they can prove it, but they never have. They're just so absolutely certain that consciousness must be a function of matter, that it must be a function of the brain. They completely deny even the possibility of consciousness existing independent of it, right? Therefore, they insist that it's proven. It's simply because they refuse to acknowledge any other possibility. It's the material model. It's the materialistic reductionist science. Everything is made of matter. Consciousness is made of matter. Consciousness is a phenomena of matter. It is an emergent property of the complexity of matter. That's what they call it. And yet, it defeats them at every turn. It is qualitatively different than matter. The very theories that they say are absolutely true are coming from consciousness. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. The entire theory of science is emerged in consciousness. It's what we're consciously aware of. And as a result, when you look at that, I say, no, it is not proven. Matter of fact, talk to physicists and they'll say there's two great mysteries in the world. The origin of life, how life the origin of matter, right? How anything came to be. And the other one is how matter created consciousness. It's a great mystery. But you look at those, they're completely contradictory. In one hand, we say, we're not really sure about the origin of matter. And then secondarily, we say matter created consciousness. Well, we don't even know about matter. We don't even know what it is. We have no idea what it is. And yet we have this superstructure of concepts and ideas that are built on the assumption that matter does exist. And yet we don't know what it is. That's the fact. That is the scientific truth. It is an assumption that they keep creating hypotheses and do an experiment to try to find that conclusive thing that says, this is it. This is matter. And it has yet to be found. And they'll build more linear accelerators, they'll do more tests, and the results will continue to be ambiguous. Because personally, I have seen that it is consciousness. Now, I can't prove it. I cannot prove it in scientific terms because consciousness does not need to conform itself to a material process. But it recognizes the entire thought process and everything that creates that level of assumption. But I just go back to what my actual experience is. I never experience matter. I only experience consciousness. In fact, those scientists never experience matter. They only experience consciousness. That's all that's ever experienced. You cannot experience anything outside of it. Everything is contained within consciousness. And so to assume that my consciousness is made of that which I am experiencing is nonsense. It makes no sense. I constantly experience the primacy of consciousness all the time. So why in the world would I assume that what I'm experiencing made me that is having the experience? When you really look at it, you go, that's absurd. But that's how we've been really indoctrinated. This is how we have been forced to believe. And so we are making everything fit into a material model, even if it doesn't fit. Consciousness is the square peg that they're trying to beat into a round hole, and it's never going to fit. What was that? I feel my question was answered, but I'm pretty sure nothing registered. Oh yeah, it registered. If you feel the answer, just don't worry about it. You're good. Oh, hello, Christian. Good to see you. Pierre says, thank you, G, for your response. Beautiful answer and explanation. Very helpful. Ishiel. Hi, this is Ishiel from Vancouver, Canada. My brother says he is awakened and he seems to be living from this state. He is asking what to do now. He has been in non-doing state for a long time. Well, I'd have to talk to your brother about it. I can't really discern it. If you're sitting around not doing anything, then you may be in a state of samadhi, but you're not awakened. And that is not enlightenment. Enlightenment is fully engaged with life. Look at Muji. That's a perfect example of somebody he's totally engaged. And at the same time, he's completely beyond. He's not doing. He's doing all the time. There's many that are like the Zen masters. They're doing all the time. They just do the other stuff. So it's a great question, but I would actually have I'd have to talk to him specifically. And he says, humans are not living a life, they're lived by life itself. What sees through the eyes of a human is consciousness. There's nothing else. Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. Hey, GP. This is Bogdan. Any thoughts on depersonalization, derealization? Well, depersonalization is simply everything. When you depersonalize something, it's not about you anymore. Stuff is just happening. And that is a step towards the ultimate realization. Let's see. As far as derealization is concerned, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Starlight Glimmer says, do our egos continue on in any form after we die? No. No, they do not. They are part of the whole mechanism, and they just collapse. What does continue is a very subtle energy that wants to be a form. It's very subtle. It's called the vasanas. In Hinduism, it is called the repository consciousness. In Buddhism, that gives rise to a form, to another life, and that form then creates an ego to go with it. So the ego is not a thing. Remember, the ego doesn't even exist as a thing. The ego is a mistake of perception. It is consciousness projecting itself on that which is external to itself. Starlight continues, and if we create our own realities, does that mean we also created everything horrible? Is it possible to get rid of all pain for everyone forever? Do we each reach eternal peace when we die? And is every conceivable reality just as real as our own? Is there one where everyone who ever lived is in hell forever, for example? Can we stop all that from all people's experiences forever? No, there isn't an alternative reality where everybody's in hell and another one where everybody's in heaven. It doesn't work like that. What I really recommend for you, what I'm sensing in you, Starlight, rather than focusing our attention on stopping the consciousness from suffering, the sense of self inevitably suffers. The false sense of self, not only inevitably, it must suffer, because if it doesn't suffer, it doesn't wake up. Simple as that. I mean, Yogananda Paramahansa, I can never say his name, when he visited Ramana Maharshi, asked him that very question: why does God, God allow suffering? Why doesn't he just, open the gates to realization? And And Ramana replied, suffering is the means to realization. Something has to dispossess us of our interest in and our attachment to the egoic mind, the false sense of self. When it disappoints us, when it lets us down, when we suffer over it, we're willing to let it go. If it's giving us all this stuff and we're enjoying all these things, we're not willing to let it go. We're holding on for dear life. Right? And so don't put your attention on alleviating everybody's suffering. Put your attention on the cause of suffering. In other words, suffering is eliminated by eliminating the sufferer. It's not just a consciousness that we can get all the bad thoughts out of it and then they won't suffer anymore. It's not that. Dispossess yourself from all ideas that you are anything other than consciousness, and then watch how that unfolds in its capacity to bring healing and alleviation of suffering to those around you. But it has to come from there. You're alleviating the suffering of all beings because you have seen through the illusion of the sufferer. That's how it happens. Dedicate yourself to the non-dual realization, and it will take care of the suffering of humanity. It will open the door to that. You'll find yourself sitting here like I am, talking, or you may be helping somebody. You might be, who knows, it could be something very simple. You could be in a soup kitchen. But you will find the ways to alleviate suffering of humanity. But it only comes when you have really seen clearly that you are not the sufferer, that the sufferer, the false sense of self, the ego, all three mean the same thing, isn't real. It doesn't exist except as a thought. And you are not that. I can't tell if I'm running out of time here on my iPad. So if I suddenly go blank, I'll try to get back on, and maybe you guys can rejoin me. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to. My goodness, we have a ton of questions here. Before I answered it, thanks. Yeah, those Neo-Advaitist meetings are a bit excruciating to watch, with question after question being shut down, like you said. Yes, and that's why I avoid that kind of interaction. And I think Neo-Advaita is the right term. Remember, it's not as if it's not true, right? It's not complete. That's all. And therefore, it asserts itself as true by shutting down any real conversation about it. In fact, the same thing happens if you see somebody who's doing any kind of process that involves pattern interrupt and the like. You see a lot of motivational speakers do this. It's a clever way of shutting down the conversation. Abraham Hicks does it all the time. Not that I actually like them. I like a lot of the things that they say, but you can watch them shut down the conversation so that it's only their view that is heard, and they leave the person nowhere to go. And so there's a certain amount of cathartic release in that, right? But it's not an answer to the question. And most of the people I know who have gone in that direction have failed miserably. So it isn't comprehensive. It doesn't really work. Let's see. Benoit says, Benoit, I just got out of a painful 2-week egoic spell. I feel so good. I can just enjoy life now. Stop seeking answers and just be. It's so easy. Take the gift of life and do what you love. That is truth. Yes. Now, if that egoic spell should arise again, don't fight it. Just see it. Don't think it's, gotta get rid of it. I gotta get back to the bliss. Because I want to get back to the bliss is part of the egoic spell. Just sink back into that emptiness, the quiet, the stillness, and there it is again. And I may have 2 weeks of bad feelings. That's okay. It doesn't affect you as consciousness. And the moment you drop your conflict with it, it's lost its teeth. Believe me, it won't last as long. It will get smaller and smaller, but it is going to arise again because it's a conditioned habit. It's a conditioned pattern. and it has to be completely expunged from the system, and then it doesn't arise anymore. Vinny Harris, I just subbed to your channel. Oh, fantastic. If any of you are listening in who have not subscribed, please do. You get notified about it. It helps me. And all these comments help as well. And share it as well if you feel so inspired to do so. I personally believe this kind of conversation is what the world needs to be hearing. Simple as that. This is the answer. To me, this is the answer to the problem. It's not a different political system. It's not a different economic system. It's not everybody just getting along. It is the probing into our deepest questions. The world is messed up because its value system is egoic. It is not based on love. It is based on exploitation. The profit over all else is the value system of most of the world. Certainly the most powerful countries in the world. Not love, not compassion, not sharing, not equity, not joy and opportunity for all, but like a game that's supposed to be won. This kind of a conversation, which examines the nature of the egoic mind and how it is inevitably going to fail, and that love is the only way, as cliche as that sounds, is the conversation that needs to be had. It needs to be had on a level that has enough depth so that love is all you need isn't just some kind of hallmark sentiment, that the power and teeth of that actually get to be seen. Hassan, again, can you say something about selfishness? Our very center is based on animal instincts. Isn't that bound to create suffering and self-centered action, regardless of how awake one is? No. Only when you are identified with it and give it, and are you really acting it out? When you are awake, it's not that you try to deny the animal nature. Of course, the system wants to survive. Of course it does. But the moment you're aware of that, you can just allow it to be there. You can, oh yeah, there's a drive in me to survive. Okay, fine. That's the animal instinct. But I can transcend that. The awakened transcends it. It doesn't deny it. It doesn't get rid of it. It doesn't pretend that it isn't there. It doesn't even try to go beyond it. It completely accepts it for what it is. In that acceptance, you become the master of it. It no longer dictates to you. You will decide you're going to survive or not. That's what allowed Christ to just crucify me. It's fine. You let him do it because he had transcended that. He didn't need to hold on to his human life anymore. Yeah, the animal instincts will still be there. We'll still mate, right? We'll still eat. We'll still do all the things that we need to do. But the primacy of it, dictating our lives, will no longer be there. It will just be an aspect of life that will come and go as necessary. And it will then become into proportion. Our identification with it gets it so blown out of proportion that we're trying to protect ourselves from imaginary enemies. We're always anticipating what could be wrong, right, to protect ourselves now. That can go away. And you'll find that those instincts only show themselves when there's actually a real imminent danger, which you also find is extremely rare. And the more loving humanity gets, the more and more rare those real dangers are going to be. We could eliminate all the danger for ourselves and every other critter on the planet, and we could do it in a very, very short period of time if we simply let go of our ideas about our own nature. If we discovered ourselves as who we were and let that love animate us, we would be able to fix everything we're facing. If we don't do that, well, we may see the end of humanity. Happy Face says, read Anita Morjani or watch her video. Oh, read. She was in a coma. The doctors were amazed that she came out of it. She was shutting down with end-of-life lymphoma. The only thing is she was witnessing all consciousness, always consciousness of everything. Yes. That is the case of a lot of people. Everything's shut down. You're not getting any information. There's no content in consciousness, but there's still self-awareness. You don't need to be aware of anything to be aware. You're aware that there's nothing. It happens every night when we go into dreamless sleep. We are aware. But there's no content. So there's no time, there's no space, there's no identity, there's no me, there's no you. None of that is present. We do it every single night. We go into this coma. Somebody in a coma, they can have that experience. Consciousness, isn't consciousness always conscious of something? No, it's not. It's conscious, it's just consciousness. The of comes and goes, right? You say it's conscious of something. Well, that something wasn't there at one moment and then is gone the next, right? So consciousness is not dependent upon there being something to be conscious of or not. And of course, in the state of samadhi, which is where, or deep sleep, which is very similar, there is simply awareness of nothing. There's absolutely no content whatsoever. And there's an awareness of that. But there's not even an awareness of the sense of I. It is pure awareness. This is a deep thing to ponder. Awareness, not even of the sense of I. It's almost as if you're not even aware of your own existence. You just are your own existence. But that existence is awareness. Oh my God, it is so subtle. I hope I'm doing a good job of pointing at it because I can't say it. I'll just, look, right there. I can't say it. Christian, sorry. Oh, hi, Christian. Good to see you. Mark Immel. It's interesting how the essence is inseparable. Everything begins paradoxical to anyone when trying to explain it. If you say it is everything or something, the mind takes it in a literal sense. Yes, that's the problem with words. That's why I'm always using different words, and and pointing this way, and that. If you say it, if somebody says it's everything, I'll say it's nothing. If somebody says it's nothing, I'll say it's everything, until I discern that they really aren't going one way or the other, that they are in pure emptiness. And pure emptiness simply means it's neither of those, and it's both of those, and it's one or the other. None of those definitions hold any water anymore. They're not definitive. And yes, the moment you say something like that, the mind latches onto it. It's nothing. And I think that's kind of what a lot of the Advaita teachers do. They latch onto the nothing part of it and not the everything part of it. And so it becomes true, but not the whole truth. Right? You get lost in the emptiness. They say you stink of Zen, as they'd say in Zen. And there's the famous koan by Swan Song, a Korean Zen master. He takes a stick and he bangs it on the ground. And he says, stick and sound, same or different? If you tell me they're the same, I will hit you 30 times. If you tell me they're different, I will still hit you 30 times. Now, whack, stick and sound, same or different. This is exactly what he's pointing at. If you say they're the same, you're stuck in the absolute. You're stuck in the neo-Advaita. You're stuck in the emptiness. If you say they're different, you're stuck in the manifest world. You're stuck in materialism. You're stuck in the subject-object split. Both of those are wrong. So where's the right place? Where's the place to stand? That's the answer to that koan. It's very simply, just this. It is neither this, nor that, nor both, nor neither. Yet it is. It's just this. Awareness. Hi, G. Find it very difficult to hear what you are saying. Am I the only one? Some people are. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with I had to plug in the iPad, so I don't really have a mic. It's just the mic on the iPad itself, and I guess it's not as good as it could be. So I'm sorry. We're doing the best we can. I'm speaking up, but I'm not yelling. So sorry about that, awareness. Klesu says, when I cease identifying with the person, I identify with perception, with light and energy playing. When I fully experience that, it collapses into awareness. There you go. Still in perceiving, there is always experience in form, so many possibilities. Yes, but you're not any of those. They're appearing, and they will continue to appear for eternity, because it is the nature of awareness to generate form. It moves in and out of form, but it's never contained by it. That's the thing to get, right? Music is never contained in the song. It's expressed in the song, but it's never stuck there. Consciousness is expressed in infinite variety of forms, but it's never stuck there. It is never contained by them. It's only when we mistake the form for myself, that idea arising, that the sense of a separate self comes to the fore. And that's the only thing anybody suffers from. Bogdan continues, it's as if there's no person, no world, but no awakening, or my mind imagining awakening as an object. No, there is no person, there is no world. These are all just concepts. There's just experience. What you're experiencing is consciousness, not a world. There's not you and a world and this perceptual mechanism where you're experiencing a world. There's only consciousness. There is no world. There's no person. The experience, the experiencer, and the experiencing are all one continuum. Happy face. Anita experienced her father and a friend as herself, but still knew their individual essence. She also experienced God as herself, but still felt her own essence. Everyone was her in some way. Yes. You know, individuality is not lost in the awakening. It is enhanced. The oneness doesn't become nothingness. There's still a sense of self and other. You just realize that it's just a transient sense. It's how consciousness can manifest itself as form. This is wonderful. Yeah. So I am me and I am you at the same time. And at the same time, I'm not you and I'm not me. So I get to experience the joy of intimacy with you. But that's simply consciousness experiencing the infinitude of its own nature. But it experiences it not in nothingness, but in a moment. A moment that's absolutely rich in meaning. But the meaning is in the moment itself. It's not derived someplace outside it. The moment is just the moment of pure experience. And that experience is awesome. Every moment becomes awesome. Why? Because it is. Because it's a mystery. It's a spontaneous appearing. It's not just the end result of 13.8 billion years of evolution. It is a spontaneous happening right now. Hi from Sweden, says Peppy. I think you're a great speaker. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Tabby writes, how can we invoke our inner innocence? Which methods lead to death of an ego? Are you discrediting all human and social culture evolution to use roles in society? Is your conception of I a positive ego? What do you suggest a person who has been surrounded by zombies, humans driven by their ignorant egos? Well, if you can get out of being surrounded by zombies, do it. If you can't, like their family or something, then we always at every moment have the power to choose how we're going to see things. You know, them being an ignorant zombie is the image you're holding of them. In fact, they are consciousness, just like you. But they are, you know, their particular conditioned response has them acting out in their robotic way what you would refer to as being a zombie. What I would say is love them. Love them. Open yourself up to them. And open yourself up to the possibility of them moving out of your life so you don't have to deal with it. As far as your question of how do we invoke our inner innocence, you can't invoke it. It is what you are. You have to realize it. You have to discover it. You have to see that that is the truth of your being and always has been, and you have been deceived by a false self-image. You have not been ever taken out of your original innocence, nor have you ever lost it, except in belief. But belief is so powerful, it creates the experience of what is believed, even though what it believes is not true. This is the great illusion, the great samsara we all have to awaken to. This is why we suffer. And that is the death of the ego. The death of the ego is the identification with that false sense of self, that sense of self that is not you. But you have always remained you. It's never been lost. Your original innocence has never been lost, but it must be discovered because you have been believing that the false sense of you is actually you. And therefore, the false sense of you feels the loss of innocence, the loss of fun, the loss of opportunity, the loss of freedom. It feels that. Why? Because it's limited. But it's not you. The way out of it is not making that better. The way out is to see that it isn't you and that you haven't really lost it. And then letting that realization, even if it's a tiny little glimmer in your mind, letting that realization take root and marry it. Believe me, if you let it in and you acknowledge it and you just give it a little attention, it will grow. It itself. You won't have to do it. It will do it for you. Nobody brings themselves to realization. The truth brings itself to realization. And you go along for the ride. And it's a great ride. Thank you so much for your answers, Hassan says. You're welcome. GP for president. Oh God, please no. That is the first time somebody has said I should, oh man, I'd make it a horrible president. I'm just like the worst administrator in the entire world. But I would basically shut down, I would take all the money that's going into the military and I'd put into schools and roads and bridges and healthcare and everything else. So there's no way in the world I'd ever get elected. Let's see. Just kind of lost my place here. Invoker innocence, thank you. GP for president. I'm gonna actually, if I can quote you, I'm gonna put that like on my website. That's pretty funny. Patricia says, "Hi GP, I have trouble finding sustainable work during my dark night. Higher self seems to be blocking lower choices now. Any tips on finding a balance in a world so focused on profit and rent deadlines? Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar, and unto God the things that are God." The higher self never blocks lower choices. It absorbs them in love. Look, if you have to get a job, if you have to be a barista at Starbucks, do it. Who cares? Right? The only reason certain things seem less than important or more important is because of because of the status that we put on them. Nothing more. There really isn't any. There's no identity in anything that we do. We just do what we need to do. I have had some of the most unbelievably mundane jobs, and I've been grateful for every single one of them. There are no lower choices. There's only the choice that this moment requires, and that moment will always have two aspects of it. It will always contribute to your spiritual awakening, and it will always contribute to having your needs met. We do have to learn how to be wiser than serpents and harmless as doves. We do have to learn how to function in a world that is antagonistic towards us, that is antagonistic towards spirituality, that is driven by the worst possible motivations of a human being, and have no regard for the sanctity of life at all. And so we have to simply do what needs to be done in the moment and attach no meaning to it other than that. So your higher self is not blocking choices. You may be thinking, even the fact you call it a lower choice means that there's some kind There's some kind of judgment. You're investing it with a quality that it doesn't have. And the other thing is, there's no need necessary to find sustainable work. You don't have to have a career. You might. You may end up with one. You wouldn't believe the number of jobs I've done over the course of my life. But even when I was doing like computer stuff, I was a contractor. I just came and went. None of it was really sustainable. So the whole idea of it being sustainable, stable, that whole ideal of, I've got my job and I'm settling in, I'm building my life and all that. It's just all nonsense. Life just makes short work of all of that. Just be present in this moment. What does this moment need? That's it. As Christ said, take no thought for tomorrow. What she'll eat, what she'll drink, what she'll put on. Consider the lilies of the field. They sow not, they spin not, neither do they sow. And yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Don't worry. Be present in the moment. Take each moment as the gift that it is. And don't put any kind of context on it. Just find the love in the moment. The rest will take care of itself. I guarantee you. Starlight says, thank you for your answer. I'm trying to let go of my fears and anxiety of eternal suffering, but sometimes they still get to me. Any advice for letting go of fear that won't seem to go away? Well, you're saying let go, which really means I want it to go away, which means you're fighting with it, which means you're afraid of it, which means you're holding on to it. You want to really let go of fear? Feel it. Let yourself feel it. Stop fighting it. Stop turning it into an enemy that somehow has to go. We're not seeking an emotional state. We are seeking spiritual power. And spiritual power is the ability to be present no matter what is happening. And that the cultivation of that power starts with simply being present with your own feelings without any agenda to change them, get rid of them, transcend them, or do anything with them at all. Total presence. So when that fear arises, say, come. 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 I'm bigger than come. Whatever it is you're about, come. You are welcome here. I'm not going to try to get rid of you anymore. And watch what happens. There's nothing to sustain it. It will either reveal what it really is afraid of, and it's probably something that happened when you were 3 years old or something, right? Or it'll just dissolve. Our fighting, our resisting is what perpetuates it. And that's just because we think somehow our fears are a problem. They're not. Just be with them and watch what happens. Say yes. Be in this place of inner allowing. I call it the yoga of allowing. I'm not kidding. It is a position you take, and you just stay there. Everything is welcome here. It's okay. Yes, you're going to feel fear. You're going to feel doubt. You're going to feel loneliness. You're going to feel pain. You're going to feel discouragement. You're going to feel disillusion. If you don't say no to them, if you don't say no, and you don't create a story about them, you don't create some strategy to try to get rid of them, just let them be there. No story, no narrative, no nothing. Pure presence. They will go through you like a cloud passing in the sky. And they will lose all of their power, all of their influence, all of their importance, and then you will know peace. Oh, I just got another warning on my battery. I think I can get to I'm going to take a few more questions, but I really don't want this to stop prematurely. So thank you all for these incredibly wonderful questions. I hope you don't mind my rather sloppy background here, because I'm set up in my studio to make some official videos, and I didn't want to rearrange everything, so I just kind of like turn and hook things up. I get a laugh out of Remington. You're great, buddy. I'm gonna take a minute with this question. Separate question. Did our egos create this reality ourselves, or was it the higher version of us that determined what this universe would at least appear to be like? The ego creates nothing. It is a creation. For some reason, and every single true spiritual teacher I know says the same thing. And it's always like, for some reason, the sense of a separate self arose. I could say it's because the pure awareness wanted to experience itself, but all of those are just kind of ideas after the fact to try to explain a phenomena that is mysterious. It's like the fall that had to happen. The sense of a separate self had to arise. It was not created by the ego. It created the ego. Right? The sense of there being a separate self had to arise before any kind of sense of identification with it, or being stuck in it, or any of the world that goes along with that. And the creation of the entire universe happens as a result of that. Because it isn't just the creation of the sense of separate self. The separate self exists within a context. The arising of the sense of a separate self is the arising of the universe. And then there's the arising of identification with that separate self and other, and now I'm in the universe instead of the universe in me. All of that has arisen. It's not been an act of will. It is not an act of creation. It's not God deciding he's going to do it this way, or she's going to do it this way. It is simply something that arose. That is not a satisfying answer to the mind, I know. But it's, it's not any different than, the scientists. We have the Big Bang, right? Okay, we have the Big Bang, and it's a phenomenon that can explain everything that's happened ever since then, how things formed and how this universe got created. It explains everything except consciousness. It can't explain that. But to go all the way back and say, well, why was there a Big Bang? No idea whatsoever. In fact, if the circumstances had been slightly different, no universe might have appeared. Or it could have been completely different. The physics would have been different. The periodic table, the standard model, all different. Right? So there's absolutely nothing absolute about the way things are right now, this particular instance of the universe. So realizing that the entire thing is a mystery, right? It simply arose. Right? That which is a singular thing exploded for some completely unknown reason. The total mystery, which science can never answer. And so they just simply accept. This is science accepts it's one miracle, and so it's one miracle, and it bases a comprehensive theory out of it, because it can't explain the most fundamental premise to the entire thing, which was the origin of it. Right? And we say if God did it, well, I won't get off on that. Because what I'm trying to point out is that ultimately everything comes back to this essential mystery as to why things are the way they are. They are the way they are. This did happen. And the realization of that, and the letting go of the mind's desire to understand it within a context that it can relate to, is something you just simply drop. And then understanding just happens. It just is. This is the way it is. That sense of self did arise. The sense of identification did arise. I wish I could give you a more definitive answer. I wish I could give you something that would be satisfying to your mind. All I can do is point you into the direction of that which is simply aware of it and the infinite possibility of what could appear. And this did. It had the audacity to actually become a manifest reality rather than just a possibility. We don't even know why that's the case, why this happened instead of that. When the Wright brothers finally did that first flight in 1903, there was somebody in France who did it a week later. Slightly different conditions, different weather in North Carolina, and the guy in France would have been first. Why? Really, the more you look at things, the more you realize what a mystery It all is. Our minds really love to create this little linear causation and think it understands things. It doesn't understand anything. It explains nothing. Absolutely nothing is explained by that. This is the mystery that we all have to come home to. The mystery of our own being. The wonder of our own being. And let that just sink into us. Let it answer the questions that can be answered and dissolve the questions that can't. So there's just this simple, wonderful sense of being and presence. So, I think, judging from the clock and all, it's been an hour and 40 minutes, a little shorter than I normally go, but I'm thinking that I'm going to look here just here and see if anything pops out. But I'm going to say, I'm going to say goodbye now, just in case it does go dead. I'll keep going till it does go dead. So I'm just going to say thank you to everybody who's been here. Thanks to all the questions. I'm going to keep going for a little bit, but I may get to the end. I may not, but like and share. it helps with this this level of conversation. So I'm honored that you show up and spend time with me. On average, people spend a lot of time listening. It means that this subject is important to people. It's significant. It has value. And it's touching something inside of you. So we want to touch more. We want to touch everybody. My mission in life is to eliminate suffering from all beings. I know it's delusional, but it's a nice, big, juicy delusion, isn't it? So, let's see. Mark. We're going to grab a question from somebody I've not answered a question for before. GP, my back catalog of my miserable moments of my life arrive to me on a daily basis. They seem to appear when I'm too relaxed and easygoing. Feels like I've got to be on my toes most of the time. That is a programmed, a conditioned response. I know that one well because when I was young, I had to be on my toes all the time because my mother's illness, I never knew who was going to show up. I didn't know what was going to be. I knew she was going to be there at all. Right? She'd either zone out and for hours would just be gone and I'd be completely on my own, or she'd be there and just like, it was crazy. It was just utter craziness. And so for me, I was always on my toes. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I couldn't relax if my life depended on it. So what it simply meant is that you were not in a safe, secure environment when you were a child. What do? In order to deal with that, let me make sure I've got you back here again, so I'm answering the right question. Just notice that that's happening. When you go into meditation or some quiet space and you're just beginning to relax into it, you're just kind of like feeling yourself settle, and this stuff comes, recognize that there is a programmed pattern in you that says you can't relax. If you do, you're going to die. Something bad is going to happen to you. You don't fight it, you don't resist it, you simply sit with it. You go, I see, I get it. What's going to happen to me? In Inner Reconciliation, I teach people how to actually interact with this, and you can take any of my Inner Reconciliation courses you like. But that's what has to happen. You have to recognize it, not go off on it, not resist it, but be present with it. So you recognize that this is a deep pattern, that it's there because it's trying to protect you. It sees moments of idleness as being dangerous. And so you have to be so present and create such an atmosphere of love and acceptance that it gets the message that it is safe to relax. Believe me, there was obviously a time in your life, probably early on, when it wasn't safe to relax. When you did relax, you did get slammed. If you let your guard down, you got blindsided. Your nervous system learned. And so it's fully expecting to get slammed in some way when you react. And that's what it's doing. It starts being vigilant. It starts looking around. Be with it. There's no other way to allow this to move through the system and finally be dissolved. This is a trauma that needs to be discharged. And it can only be discharged by creating an environment that is safe enough for that energy to come up and be seen and to be experienced, and for that energy itself to experience genuine safety. Then it will see, I can let down the guard. I can let down my defenses. This is what opens up the door to inner reconciliation, the end of inner conflict. And it's an absolutely necessary step to take, even on the deep spiritual path. I mean, it's a very good as a personal development thing, because it brings about inner conflict, and it helps expand your life and that. But it's critical to the awakening path, especially after some degree of awakening has occurred, because it's the way in which you begin to integrate the non-dual vision, the non-dual realization into the energy system itself. So it goes from being seen to being felt to being lived. I think I'm going to end it on that note, because I don't know if the machine crashes here. This gets posted to I don't know what happens on Facebook, or excuse me, on YouTube, if the machine crashes while you're doing it. So I am going to bring it to a close now. It's been almost 2 hours, so close to my normal time. So thank you all for being here. I mean, I really, from the bottom of my heart, I am just so honored and pleased that you want to be engaged in this level of depth of conversation. So I honor you all. I love you all. I wish you all the very best in the next year, even though time doesn't actually exist. It's just something we made up in the mind. Tuesday will be the next day, and I just wish you the best right here and now. And the best is the realization and integration of the truth of your being. Thank you all. Namaste.